Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Village of Land and Plan Commission meeting to order for Thursday, March 28th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. We'll all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll play ball. Hey, we're still 500.
Roll call, we've got Greg,
Here,
Lake. Here. Nellis is absent. Newman, present. Janice.
Here.
Hayleitner. Here. And Yates is present. Statement of public notice.
That's been posted.
Item 5, discussion and possible approval of Plan Commission meeting minutes from 2/9/24. You see anything, Mike?
make a motion to approve the minutes of February 29th, 2024.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I think that on item 6, when it comes to contract was signed for tree replace this summer with landscaper, we should put Mike's name on there. That's the one who made that comment.
Janice, like Janice.
Yeah.
Just so it's in the record. that-
I made my motion to add Steve's comments, to add Mike Janice's name to comment on lines, in paragraph 6, item 6.
I'll add my second. We have an amended motion and a second. Any other comments?
I just want to be clear, though, that I'm speaking for West Green Ridge condominiums, not West Green Ridge Estates.
Right. Yeah, important distinction. Any other comments? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries to approve the minutes with the corrections or clarifications. Item 6, citizens' comments. Nothing done? Anyone? No, going once, going twice?
Let the record show that all the citizens are happy.
Yes. Thank you.
Everyone.
Historic events. Item 7, discussion of possible action on signed permit application for the Pink Flamingo Studio and Boutique at 20316 West Main Street, Lannon, Wisconsin 53046. And I will be recusing myself from this one.
Yep, so I just emailed out my comments ahead of time, but I printed out a thing here to summarize. We handle this sign the same way we handle all the other signs in this multi-tenant building. So they're entitled to a wall sign, which is applied for tonight. The size of which 20 square feet is well within the building frontage calculation for these units, would be approximately 100 square foot maximum. They're entitled to a tenant directory sign. I didn't notice that in the application. I may have missed it. But everything else is subject to your comments.
I have a question. The application says 106 and the picture shows 107.
The reason why I like that is because, the 106 is on the side of the building, but our business really is at that entrance. So 107 is actually, Ideal Property. We share an entrance with them.
We know how this sign is gonna be attached to the building.
I do.
Okay. we're gonna give that sign guy a hard time right now, I think.
We're gonna say really carefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it could fall apart, I mean,
It'll be attached with Tapcons, concrete anchors, and it'll have black plastic caps that close over those so that you don't see them.
and it's not lit.
Unless they're gonna do external.
We will do external lighting later on. If that makes sense. I got a guy for that too.
I don't know, you'd have to really watch out for that light bulb guy too.
Oh,
Make a motion to approve the sign for the Pink Flamingo Studio at 40316 West Main Street, Suite 106.
I'll second.
You have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Just mark me down as an abstention. Brenda, please. Item number 8, thank you.
thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
You bet. Discussion and possible action on Lakeshore Berry Vault's lack of compliance for a sign permit. So this was one where, Mr. Grimm brought this up, as well. As, I had noticed it as well, and we had, sent a letter to them requesting that they simply, submit a sign permit application along with the fees, so that we have it on record. And that it was compliant, and I don't think we received a response from that.
I did not. I believe it was sent in December, early January. And the sign permit application was included with the letter and.
$100 a day, so
So-
an incentive,
That would probably spur some action.
normally does in the past.
Well, I think that, I don't know if we could send the police chief down to issue the ticket or if it has to go to the village board. But while they're down there writing the ticket for that, they can also inform them that their entrance is not paved. Off
I
of
asked
Good Hope
Brenda
Road,
about that too.
and that needs to be paved.
She's sending paving letters in April.
Letters, yeah, that probably April, maybe April first.
She doesn't have much going on.
You got some free time next week.
Yeah.
You ain't doing much Tuesday.
So, I guess the question before the commission is what if any action do we want to take as a secondary step? I know we've got, as you see later in the agenda, there have been some efforts made to start putting some processes in place, some formalized processes in place to handle situations like this. However, they have not been formally enacted as of yet. Provide an update on where we're at with that later on, but what do we want to do as a board or commission?
Is this? I thought we had put a process on a complaint that the police chief and the building inspector inspect some issues and stuff like that. Wasn't that passed by the village board already?
The police chief has always had code enforcement.
Right,
abilities.
authority.
Correct.
Yeah,
And so, and again, I still recommend putting them on notice with a 10 or 20 day time frame and inform them that it's $100 a day after that.
Do we can we ask the attorney, or does that have to go to the village board to write that letter?
we actually have a draft letter from Mr. De La More's office already that's intended to be used in those enforcement procedures, so I think
Send it on.
that could be used in this one as well.
Sure.
Since this is a municipal court matter, I would recommend that, the clerk send that letter out with a copy to our office. And if there is, a lack of response, to send us a copy of the original letter sent to these people so that we can issue, a long form complaint. Because oftentimes the judge is confused as to what a non-traffic matter is doing before him.
Is this something that can be done within the next 30 days, so it could be on the agenda for the next meeting?
Sure, I don't know what action you would be taking, except maybe approving the application if you get it. So you have to coordinate the time.
Well, this will kind of like give them notice that, you know, we're not just sitting around, you know, we are serious in this town. I mean, especially if he's gonna get a letter that about his driveway, that it don't sit to him, you know. So. I make a motion to have the clerk send a letter to Lake Shore Burial Vault, copying Von Briesen, is it? Yeah, Hector, to have a sign permit application by the next plan commission meeting,
Submitted by.
submitted. Now, they might have something going for them, is not, we don't always have a monthly meeting, so they might luck out, they might not.
Just by a
We
date,
have one that's-
but have it submitted by a
I
date.
think, yeah, by the next plan commission, and whatever that is, if it's a week ahead of time that you have to have it, it should be dated a week ahead.
So can be reviewed.
We have a motion.
I'll make that a motion. I thought it
No,
was a.
we have a motion, I'm looking for a second.
I'll second that.
Well, I think Mike's right, though. I think we should maybe set a date like a week ahead of the plan commission meeting, so it can be put on the agenda.
Yeah.
April 19th.
Yeah.
Do you like that date, Mike? That's the
Yes,
Friday
yep,
before
yep,
the next
yep.
scheduled planning commission meeting.
That gives the engineering a chance to review it, and
So we have an amended motion to include the date of
yeah,
April 19th.
yes. Yeah,
I'll amend the second.
Any other comments? Yeah, it's a pretty simple application. It shouldn't take more than 5 minutes and a check.
Yeah.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I just have
Hector?
a question, point of information.
Yes, sir.
Are there any safety concerns with regards to the signage?
No.
Stables?
Oh, yeah.
Not obstructing.
No, it appears like it would
It looks
certainly
pretty
be in compliance, if it just simply had a proper application.
Okay.
They poured a slab, it's on there, it's not high, it appears to be out of the right of way.
Oh, yeah.
One thing
There-
about it is that there is rebar coming out of the hoops, and it looks like their intention was to have a movable,
Well,
you know, it looks like it was dragged into place.
They'll probably just.
They built it in their yard. They built it in their yard.
Yeah, it's one of their lids that they made.
Oh, that's why there's rebar sticking out of it. I didn't get that part.
It's a lift.
Okay, so I got it.
Yeah, here's our slab,
Yeah.
we just
Yeah,
happen to
right.
have a couple hundred
And then they
sitting
stuck
on
a
it.
rock in it, okay.
Stuff a rock on it, and off you go.
It's durable.
It's fine,
I have no problem with it. I mean,
It lasts.
yeah, and I
it's a
have no,
burial vault, you know?
I have no issue with the sign itself, no,
It's just that it's not documented,
right.
you know. I mean,
All right, item 9, discussion of possible action regarding parking lot construction at 7291 North Landing Road relative to the plan of operation site plan. This is one that I think many of us received phone calls about, including Mr. Wood.
Yep.
You also received a call, I believe.
So I put a couple documents in the packet, nothing new. It's just what was last before the plan commission, so that folks had it for reference in case you received or may receive a phone call about it. In going back and forth between the neighbor who has made the complaints, and the property owners that are trying to do the work. Just frankly, seems like there's quite a disconnect between thinking that they received all of their approvals at plan commission versus what really happens at plan commission is we approve a site plan, but they still need to apply for a grading permit. So another thing, just for context that went on here, as part of the site plan of operation application packet, we require that they provide like a CSM document, et cetera. What I required and reviewed as part of this packet, I relied on the Waukesha County GIS that shows the property boundaries. They provided a legal deed with a written legal description, but not showing like an actual drawing of the legal description. My opinion, what they were planning on doing in their concept drawing was such that they were, again, in my opinion, maintaining decent enough clearances from the neighboring property that it seemed okay to me at the time. The neighbor has since disputed kind of where exactly this property line is, and seen some correspondence from the owner of 7291. There's some discrepancy about what the current parcel is versus what a old retired parcel layout was, et cetera. So that's one issue. The second issue is the neighbor is concerned that the way that they're forming up their concrete driveway, they're getting closer to the property line than they showed in their concept, and they just felt they wouldn't be able to achieve, you know, the drainage. And the short of it is, for both reasons, I discussed it with the building inspector, and he essentially issued a stop work order until they come back with a survey marking out where the actual property corners are. Honestly, in my opinion, the neighbor doesn't exactly maybe have the accurate understanding of where the property boundary is either. But the point is, it's private property thing, and it's not our spot to make a determination, but it's our spot to make sure that the people doing the work do their due diligence in pointing out where that is. We had said real quick, Jerry, before you go.
Okay.
We had said in our comments pretty clearly in the past that they needed to apply for a grading permit. And that, you know, the boundary condition on that was you cannot direct drainage towards your neighbor's property.
Right.
And so I've, again, discussed all that with the building inspector, emailed it to the requirements to the applicant several times. They said they wouldn't be able to put something together for tonight's meeting. So that, you know, made it very clear to them that the next meeting is not for another month, that it's kind of up to them if they're intending to do something different that would prompt a change to their site plan of operation, or if they plan on submitting a grading permit that substantially conforms to what the plan commission approved, that the building inspector could handle it.
I'm representing the complaining neighbor. He has broken his knee in November and is confined to a wheelchair, so we didn't want to roll over here tonight. I've been involved in this since the initial start, before anybody else got phone calls. And also a previous surveyor in one of my earlier lives. So the dispute where the property line is in the area of 6 to 8 feet. Normally you get in a foot to 18-inch type discussions, but this is quite major, and that's what's really blowing it up. There should be lot irons, but we don't see any. Dave didn't have his surveyed ever. Supposedly Mike Gildemeister did a few years ago, and there should be some lot irons in the back, but it really needs to get lot irons installed. It just does, you know, and to end all this discussion. So that's the biggest issue that's really going here. The second is, and what Ben tested, spoke about, was the drainage. And also, he can't drain over the sidewalk, can he? You're gonna get an icing condition. That, to me, we always had to put a catch basin in front of the drive and drain it into the storm sewer.
Sure, so that is something I should have been more diligent about at the original go around through plan commission, but would have expected to see that as part of his grading
Yeah.
permit application.
Right.
Right.
Because the way he was talking, he's just gonna run it out to the sidewalk. Well, you can't in Wisconsin drain over the sidewalk in the winter time.
Sure,
Well, the thing I see is when the plan commission approved the site plan. Stamped right on the bottom, not for construction.
I was just.
I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean,
Right.
it's, yeah, we approved the concept and the appearance of it, but that don't mean that we approved
right.
the installation.
Right.
I kind of explained it to him, and this is a disconnect with a lot of folks, and so I explained it to him as like. Yeah, the plan commission approved you to have a residence upstairs. That's not the same as getting your building permits, your state approvals, or your occupancy permit.
Right.
It means you can proceed
Yeah.
in applying for those things.
And also, calling this a site plan, we got quite few restrictions in our ordinance on what should be shown on a site plan. And there's virtually nothing here.
So in reviewing this, I'm open to more feedback on that. In reviewing this, the neighbor complained about, headlight glare, and the site plan does show, a 6-foot privacy fence. We've got the setback limits on there and identified kind of what's conforming, non-conforming. Et cetera. So what they didn't do is put together the grades.
Right, normal site plan.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, if memory serves me correctly, they originally had 2 iterations of this parking lot with a smaller number of cars. Yeah, so I don't recall them coming to us and saying, we're gonna go with the bigger one or the smaller one either.
Well, this one was part of the, this one here in the packet is what the plan commission approved.
The 6.6 one, I think is one that we approved.
Yep,
Yeah.
correct.
I mean, basically, we're not engineers, we're not, anything like that, or I don't wanna, say it, we're not. The people that are gonna actually look to make sure all the Ts and Is are, anything like that. Are in place, we look at the overall concept, it's meeting what we're looking for, are the bushes and the trees and the layout, stuff like that. But, we hope that people, and this isn't the only place that we have problems with once in a while, that they don't understand is, it's not a free, go for it, type deal.
Right, and this is. What. The detail that you said, Mike, that. Plan commission doesn't review, that's. Generally. All reviewed during the permitting process.
In the packet, in what you guys would get, you'd get the grading, you'd get the,
Okay, so I want to speak to that also, and just being blunt about it, I feel like this was a lesson learned on my part, so. When we're dealing with developers, we know that there's the means, the legal, most cases, the legal resources, the engineering, the planning, whatever. And so we kind of insist on all of those things up front. Prove to us this will work, with the mindset being prove to us that this will work. So that when the plan commission approves it, we know it's gonna work. In this case, and quite frankly, as is the case with a lot of the local businesses, the approach is more. They want to know that they can do it before they spend the money on the engineering or the surveying, etc. So we get a situation like this, and this is an unfortunate one. Where they take that approval and they skip the permitting process. Intentionally or not, I've got no opinion on that, it's just what it is. But it does make me kind of rethink, okay, when quote unquote, the little guy or the local business or whatever comes in here, and we're kind of a little bit lax on, you know, it seems like everything's okay, we're not gonna require everything on the lists. It's just got me kind of rethinking that a little bit.
Well, see, the other thing too is it appears that he's gonna concrete this whole thing. And I think the whole drawing was based on paving this whole.
Asphalt.
And so if they would have been asphalting this, I'm sure that the asphalting company would have been looking for a grading drawing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, that's like, you know, Land Tank down there when they expanded their blacktop around the side and around behind the building. I'm sure they had a grading permit from the village to do that.
And I would like to throw one more thing into this that hasn't been discussed. I wasn't on the plan commission back in 23 when this first came around. But I believe our ordinance requires that all new residents have a 2-car garage. This says future. Now, this was a business, but now it becomes a residence.
I thought they were going to be building the garage, because I thought that was part of the drawings that we approved was a
We
garage, because they were talking about an extra tall or something like that.
We approved a future.
Future,
Oh,
but I don't think that's correct. Then if you want to look into that.
Yeah, I
or-
don't have a response. I mean, I can tell you out of the gate, I had thought of that, but you're right, residences do require at minimum.
2-car garage.
Yeah, what we, I just focused on, this is the ROP business.
Right, but it's now
And
becoming
it's
a
a
residence.
business with a residence up top,
Yeah,
so I was focused more, I guess, on the primary use, which is
And I-
business.
and I think one of the key things when this has come up before is when you had an existing building that didn't have a garage and they were changing hands or whatever, we didn't force them. But the ordinance does say new. And
Okay.
this is a new residence.
Well, I think that would be. I'd lean on how you guys want to interpret that, et cetera.
We got
So nobody ever lived in that house before?
no, it used to be all the store upstairs.
There's a grocery, was the original grocery store
And no one
and then
lived
the
in it
antique
then?
store. I mean, it didn't have any plumbing, come on.
Yeah, no plumbing.
Nobody lived there.
There was no plumbing at all.
No, the running water was the bottle brought in.
Yeah, bottle brought in.
Had windows.
Yeah, had windows. No, it's, but, you know, we've got a legal counsel to
Yep.
see what he says about that, but
Yep.
that was my first thought when I saw future garage. I thought, wait a minute.
Yeah, and that's part of, okay, just a brief update on what I talked to the building inspector about the garage specifically. You all might recall that the owner wanted to not only build a garage, but see if he could build it with a. like a
Studio.
With the loft.
Studio.
Yeah.
Studio,
Correct.
yeah.
And we said no to that.
Right, and the building inspector said, no, that would turn this into a multifamily property essentially, and we can't do that. So I think, my read of the situation is, you know, they're trying to get to a point as fast as possible where it's generating some revenue for them. And I quite frankly don't want them to put up a cheap garage. It's prominent corner here and it should be thoughtful. But I frankly don't know what their intent is for a garage.
Because we don't even know if that's asbestos on the outside of that building yet.
Right.
And they tore the front of it off.
And I'll go one more. if you
Okay.
Something. The step on the new entrance stoop protrudes out onto the sidewalk. Now, I don't know if that's legal for ADA going into a sidewalk, and it may be on municipal property. Because the setback there is the face of that step.
Isn't that all county? The whole intersection?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm sure they got all the permits from the county, especially, you know, they started tearing up the sidewalk and everything. They tore out the sidewalk now. So,
With improper protection.
yeah, and so, you know, I mean.
But I saw that stoop sticking out there. ADA is pretty fussy about it, and then I tried to see, I recall that the property line is the right of way line, and it is the front of the stoop. So technically, that step should be built back into the platform and not onto the sidewalk. But something else for you or council to look at. It's ADA gets pretty fussy.
Well, had we had a survey,
Yep.
that would have been something that would have been caught. And there is a tension in most communities where there is a desire to upgrade the look and feel of the community, and at the same time, the people who aspire to do that do not have the deep pockets
Right.
that a developer would have. In this case, I think, I don't know about the depth of the pockets, but it struck me that they really had very little prior experience. And they overcame that with their level of enthusiasm. And I think that perhaps maybe a way to navigate this would be to inform people that when they come before the planning commission, they're really getting conceptual approval for a potential site development, subject to the details being submitted. And here we have a variety of things intersecting. It's a very prominent corner. It's got to be done in a correct fashion, because I think the long-term aspiration of the community is that it would be a benchmark for future rehabilitation of other structures or replacement.
I hope it's a minimum.
And at the same time, village has got to start somewhere. And I think that what is happening in the course of this discussion is a good start. Everyone, I think, was acting in good faith to promote the advancement of the improvement of something that has stood stagnant for the longest time.
But the other thing is that, speaking of that stoop, if, when they tore it off, it should have been wait a minute. You might not be able to go back in the original footprint.
Yep.
And they just tore it off and went back in the original footprint, so we don't see what the state approved plans are. So we don't know what they had, what the state might have saw for that stoop. Which maybe they don't understand that that's in the right of way of not their property. So if they wouldn't have touched it, we wouldn't have done a thing. It's like any house in the ROP can rebuild on the footprint. But I don't think you can grandfather a porch that might be over the area, because that's not part of the original foundation. A porch is added on. Some of these houses have that added on porch that's like mine, it sticks out in front of my house. So I'm not sure if this was a grandfathered item or if it's legal item. I don't know how to address that, what I'm saying. So when they tore it off, they should have been, well, wait a minute, you might not be able to put it back to original like that. So,
Well, that's what you get into with ADA. I've been through that too.
At what point did the building inspector get involved in that?
Should be involved in everything.
Would he have had to have a permit for,
He issues the permit.
but they would have had to pull a permit for that?
They started the work before they got a permit.
yeah, well, they started to work before that.
And they've kind of made a habit of that along the way, to be fair. I mean, they started doing plumbing work before they had any, they started clearing out the court before they had permits, so and that's not to imply that they were doing anything intentionally nefarious. I think they may have just been ignorant of the process and
But they don't
didn't
have a
realize,
contract.
but at some point, when you trip once, maybe, or you trip again, you look down,
And as far as I understand, they're doing it themselves. They don't have a contractor. So all contractors are well aware of building permits and requirements and dealing with the building inspector. But when you're doing it yourself, you have never done it before, you don't think about that stuff.
Is that something that we should recommend the building inspector go back out there and talk to them about?
Oh, he's been there,
Well, I understand that, but if they're gonna be the general contractor,
yeah,
okay, which it seems like they are.
oh, yeah.
Okay, they should understand that, anything they do, they're gonna have to get permits for and, no matter what it is. So at least it's clear that we have done due diligence, that they understand going forward, anything they do, they need to have permits for and reputable contractor doing the work.
Well, I think the other thing is this is a lesson learned for all of us too, to look for more. And, yeah, we were trying to help them help themselves, but obviously they took the whole plate and went, instead of, wait a minute, you gotta put the pieces on the plate,
I think, is it fair to say that the building owner and the building inspector are communicating quite a bit now, awaiting a survey? I think that's been initiated, correct?
I don't know the latest on that. The
Okay.
latest I know is that the building inspector met him out on sites and told him no more work until these things. I was only aware of the need for the survey and the grading permit. But apparently there was something internal to the building too that had been lingering on, and that would have been approximately a week ago, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Any of else.
Another problem here, which becomes quite common, is this is what you would call a creeping project. It isn't where it gets approved and started and they go to work. This thing's been going on for over a year, a little bit at a time now and then. By the owner when he's there, or he's not there. It's one of those problems that this is very typical of. Because they're not calling for the building inspector, although it's across the street from the village hall, isn't looking at it because we normally look for dumpsters or things like that, that there's something going on, and it sits there pretty much like it is up until 2 months ago.
It's a small outfit, a small item, but, this isn't the first time, we kind of like got our socks burnt a little bit in this town with even some major players, not following the rules and stuff like that all the time. And so, I mean, it's a lesson learned, and so we really, I guess we'll have to make it even tougher. And we don't want to be, the ones that have to make it tougher, but obviously we might have to be tougher.
Well, I think the other thing is, when they made that proposal and the drawings that they had was very impressive. And it was something that is an area that we would, as a community, have seen stand stagnant for years, and we wanted to get something. And some of the things that they proposed with the bench in front of it and everything else, and I think that contributed to all of this also.
But yet they didn't follow the guidelines of what they needed to do, and so obviously, I don't know what action that we need to take, I think, other than I make a motion that building inspector and with the assistance of the village engineer, if possible, the village attorney, kind of like if they need to escalate it, if the village inspector needs to escalate it with the village engineer and to the attorney, so they can get this place going in the right direction, getting everything they need to do it the correct way. Would be my motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Are you asking the number, to point out the different permits or additional permits that they need to pull and
Between the village inspector and the village engineer, they would know what they all need to do to make sure that this is done properly.
And the building inspector really has the legal power. He has the power to red tag it, he has the power to stop it, Ben doesn't. Hector would have to take out a legal matter, so all over it, the building inspector has a lot of power. It's singular.
And that, if the village inspector would say, hey, we need a grading permit. but then he could escalate it to Ben for review. You know, but if they can't, you know,
Well, I guess my comment would be educating the owner as to what is necessary in order to follow the steps to completion.
and that's what the village inspector should have been doing, you
Yeah.
know, saying, you know,
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hector?
I would recommend, since we don't know where this is gonna go, may well be a thinking project that we'll be looking at a year hence, that the discussion with the owner be subsequently documented so that the owner has a list of steps, and so that it can be demonstrated. We need to proceed to some form of prosecution. We can show to the court that in this instance, the village had gone overboard and provided assistance which ordinarily the owner should be seeking from the private sector in an effort to help them along. And secondly, I'm not exactly sure how Mr. Newman is involved as a representative, but I would suggest that he abstain from voting on this matter.
would it, should we ask for a monthly report, you know, research, should,
I think, I personally, I would be satisfied with maybe a copy of any documentation that, like Hector recommended. I think the goal here is to not be punitive in nature, but to try to find a way to help this entity move forward in a proper legal fashion that's not infringing on anyone else's property or rights, right? So if we can provide him with a clear outline of maybe prior missteps and corrective action that's needed, and any further approvals, permits that might, based on his site plan that he's provided, that he might or might not need going forward, we should, again, call those out and indicate.
And Mike brings up a huge point. This is not for construction.
Right,
We don't have a really legitimate site plan.
right.
So, as Ben knows, it needs grades for the stormwater.
and I'm not looking to spend the engineering dollars on us engineering this problem. So
Right.
that's
another misconception.
That's the whole thing
All
is-
Projects.
it's a whole thing that owner
Village
has to
engineer
provide.
doesn't mean your engineer.
Right.
It's ours.
That owner has to provide all the documents for review by our engineers from an engineering firm.
And so, in the, the naivete of this individual, in doing this, undertaking this task is the education thing, and that's what I was kind of stressing that. Ben and we educate him as to what he needs and what, that's what I think is being helpful, like your point, Patrick, we're not being punitive, but we're being helpful in trying to get it done.
Yeah, and I think we all realize that maybe we could have been a little clearer upfront about
Correct.
some of these things. But again, it was a learning opportunity for us as well, dealing with an individual versus some of these regular developers. So we have to adjust our approach in any future submissions and applications and accordingly, and enforcement accordingly. Again, we don't want to be obstructive or get in the way of these types of projects, but we also have a responsibility to make sure that they happen responsibly and legally and all that.
We are going to have to decide whether or not we want to bring this back monthly, bi-monthly, as a part of
What way Ben puts it on our agenda? Because
Well, I think a good start, I forget who said it, but I took a note of, next month that plan commission provide a copy of the documentation that was provided.
Right.
From the village to the property owner.
Yeah, and possibly a survey if it's been completed at that point in time.
You know, in this way, like Ben can say, okay, we told him these 5 things, needed. Then he can come back like we've done in the past and says, I received, 4 or 3 or 2 or nothing,
And I think you get the gist of what we're looking for.
Because technically, he doesn't have approved plans to do anything. Building inspector is right with a stop order.
So, just for sake of clarity, what I wrote down as the motion is a little bit different. With more specificity than what you said. And that is, basically for the village to direct the building inspector with assistance of the village engineer and the village attorney. To educate the owner on their next steps required to keep the projects moving and conforming with the requirements. And that that list should be documented in writing and copied to the plan commission at next month's meeting.
And that's what I said.
Okay.
Pretty good. Did Mike second that too?
Thanks, Tom, but
You second that, Mike?
I did second that.
There's a
You know what we said.
specific phrase in there of prior missteps and corrective actions relative to that list.
Now, when you said, the building inspector put a red tag on it, basically, but if the guy was to paint the building, there's no stopping on that,
It's
is
on a paving.
we're just,
All
Because
that
he had
I'm,
State approved plans for the building.
Yeah.
On the inside.
yeah, all that I'm aware of is as of a week ago, building inspector put a stop work relative to the driveway. And there was something interior to the building, and I can't even tell you what that was. It
Okay.
registered.
so it's all in the inspector's hands.
But anything else, I think that has an approved permit, he can continue to work on.
If he's been approved,
Yeah.
And.
All right, so we had a motion and a second. Did we did not take a vote on this yet, I don't believe. So we have a motion and a second. All those, any other discussion? No, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I abstain.
Okay, motion carries. One abstention. Item number 10, discussion of possible action on code enforcement issues. Well, what a perfect segue this was into that. So again, I put this on here because I know that last summer. We put together a working group to try to start looking at some of this stuff, put a process in place. I wanted to give you guys an update and then, another opportunity that has come up as well. So we lost a little steam because we kind of got to a point where, we felt we had a pretty good spot. We had some forms in place, we had some policy or, procedural things documented. We had a spreadsheet that was started that was going to be used to track these things, and we started to talk about how this was all going to work from a mechanical standpoint and whatnot. We got pretty far along with that. I don't recall specifically ever bringing a full, complete process, set of documents to the commission or the board for a final approval prior to that, so I think that is a next step that we need to take. It seems like that's kind of now, there's some bandwidth, I think, to start looking at these types of things. There's some interest in looking at some of these types of things from commission members. rightfully so. So I would say stay tuned for that. However, I also did recently receive an email from a company that offers enforcement, services, and I printed out a very faintly printed, for whatever reason, copy of that email. I am in the process of scheduling, a meeting with them, a brief meeting, just to, get a better idea of what their cost structure might look like, for these services, and to kind of familiarize them with our community and what types of issues they might, typically see here. I would certainly welcome any of you that are interested in attending that meeting, to attend. I'm trying to get it scheduled for the 22nd of April. But that has not been confirmed yet, but I will certainly let, the rest of the commission members know when that does get scheduled, so that you have an opportunity to attend that.
I'm sure you're aware that I would like to be there.
Really?
Yeah,
I suspected as much.
based on our last drive around in November, you know.
Yes, I suspected as much, and I assume, I assume everybody here has a level of interest. Your availability is the question, so. Again, I think, what we're tentatively looking at is April 20. Said 22nd?
You said 22nd.
Yeah. I'll have to,
Where are they from?
I don't, but they have a 262 area code, so they're local.
Close enough.
Yeah, they're local, and as you can see, they do this for several other communities, and they've kind of, if you look at their list of services, I mean, many of these are right in line with what we're looking to do. So can't hurt, but, so I guess stay tuned for that. Hector and I don't, when is Vince back from his
We
leave?
had just come back.
He's back too now?
Yeah.
Oh, we're full board.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Send the cops.
We're gonna have to get prior approval before you take vacation or he gets pregnant.
Yeah. Well,
So tell him to check with us first.
we will, except that his wife was the one who
I'm setting you up.
went across the boundaries.
Nicely put.
So I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments in this arena with regards to the enforcement issues, or if you're confident that we're moving in the right direction, then we'll just continue to push along there and look to get something formalized so that we can start actually getting some things taken care of.
Well, I think, certified survey map and, grades will solve a great amount of the problems.
It makes me think of the, welcome book that I wanna do too. Maybe have, information regarding ordinances, codes, permits, I kind of have the general idea that we put, building inspectors' contact info in there, but maybe use that as a way to educate people,
Yeah, about some of the more common violations. Yeah, so I think that would be a good idea.
If you go to the village website. Yeah, you'd find it all right there.
In regards to the website, I was thinking along the same lines, and it's been up and active for over 6 months now. And if you go there and check it out, you're like, okay, might have some more feedback now, seeing it through this lens. And
Yeah,
I know, I forget the guy's name that created it.
Bill, Rudolph.
Bill, thank you.
Well, Bill was working with Ron. and
ACOM.
ACOM.
Yeah, so I know Bill was very open to feedback and didn't receive a lot back when it went live, but
Right.
might be a good time to reconsider.
Oh, I'll turn my wife loose. She's been chomping at the bit on that site.
Okay,
There's a few things that's just hard to navigate, you know.
oh yeah, it's not very
You could
intuitive.
find it, but if you don't know how to get around, it's,
Yeah, she's made a couple requests that I thought made a lot of sense, you know, email links to trustees, emails, the reverse order of the agendas and meeting minutes and stuff, things like that were.
but
helpful.
even, but even,
I tried to call Mike, and the phone number listed for you was incorrect.
that's because we quit paying AT&T.
Yeah, smart, but we gotta get it updated. I
That's
can't
up
even
there.
remember what I was calling you about now, but
See, it wasn't that important.
I
So I
know,
was thinking, no one was, something like a zoning map, if someone wants to know what's that zone. I mean, that-
yeah, that'd be, you know,
Up there.
They put it exactly where I told them to put it, and now I go back and sometimes I have trouble finding it, so.
Good suggestion.
and then sometimes you look at the colors and you can't make out the colors because sometimes the colors look so.
Oh, on the zoning.
You know, it's like, when you look at the weather maps on TV, it's like, that don't make sense in the colors, you can't see the colors.
I would recommend that the updated zoning map be on, which Ben and I started on 10 years ago.
Yep.
So I think that would be appropriate.
Wait,
It's not good.
Our ordinance says it should be updated every year. If you look at this one out here, it's got 2010 on it.
number.
Yep. We're rolling off of 2012.
Every year
Yep.
probably seems
It's on the,
little often for a
it's on
community
the
of our
village
size.
board
But
one,
that's-
that
well, we
same board
blocked
was on
those
both
ordinances.
plan commission and village board, and so I
That's
changed
what's
the
in
village
it.
board when that
I
realizing.
tried to do it when I was here. Now that we've had all this development, it should really.
Right.
Well, we had our
Changed the
comprehensive
link to where-
Plan updated and, yeah, we've had some changes and we've got.
Me too.
Are in there now. We even amended the
Can
TIF
can they mark on the zoning then, with the TIF areas then too?
Be nice.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
Another color.
Dash line.
Yeah, that's fine.
Too hard to-
So I did notice that, you know, some of the other, there are some other properties that, you know, I think we need to look at. There's some obvious ones that some things aren't happening or are happening that shouldn't be happening. Yes, sir.
A suggestion, if I may, if you could, if the village could put together a basic check sheet, one page. I ran into this, with descriptions. I went from a 28 to a 36-inch doorway on the interior of the house. And I was told that now I had to bring the entire house up to 88 specs. This was 3 building inspectors ago, but just a basic check sheet. If you pull a building permit to do your driveway, this is the basic. You need that, your grading permit, your survey. Just a one-page check sheet that Brenda would have. Somebody comes in, here's the sheet, I handed it to you. Mark all these boxes and then come back. Everybody doesn't know Jerry or Mike to call and say, hey, what gotta do this?
Makes sense, information has been updated every.
Yeah, so I would think that might be challenging to do on a single page form for all the different types of permits that.
That's the building inspector.
Yeah, I think the easiest, I mean, while I think there's some merit to the concept, I think it's. Might be difficult to compile, I think that. What everybody does have access to is the building inspector's phone number.
Yep.
And so even if they don't know Mike or Jerry, they can call that guy and they can say, hey, here's what I'm thinking of doing. What's the process? What steps do I need to take? What permits? How much is that gonna cost? You know, so that they can make an educated decision, first of all, if they even wanna do it, right?
Yeah, they might just wanna call it a regular contractor and say, you do everything, make sure it's legal.
Yeah, I mean, You know, some of those permits aren't cheap.
Well, and when you say state approved plans, most people don't realize what that involves, I think the costs do.
So I think, yeah, but if he wants to come up with something like that, that he can make available to the clerk's office for certain items, might be something you can mention to him, Brenda.
Motion to adjourn?
I have one other item, just so that we don't drop it off.
Yep.
The agenda for the AFW plan of operation.
Yep.
I need to keep asking about this every month.
Yeah, and the crushing pile is getting larger. They shouldn't be there at all, and now they're dumping more on it.
Yep, and we still haven't heard back from them, right? We're waiting for them, I believe. I think.
They last reached out to us. With the basic, like, what's the process?
Yeah.
And where this last left off in my mind was. There's no standard form for a conditional use permit. And I inquired with Hector about. That. And quite frankly, on that one, if you're comfortable with it, Hector, I'd rather you went straight to the property owner as. Feel like a bit of a middleman on that one.
Right,
Well, we can have a joint call.
Sure.
You see, a conditional use permit is the function of what is attempted to be dealt with. And hence no form. And so what is their objective? What are the, applicable standards that are obstacles? In some places in the code, we have allowed uses, but only after there's a demonstration that the engagement in those uses at that location will not be harmful to, say, for example, an adjoining residential property. So it's a logical process, but not uniform. So we can get on a conference call with them.
okay.
No motion to adjourn.
So you still have, so you're hoping to bring a code packet back then from what we all discussed back in August, September, June or July, whatever it was?
Yeah, that was last summer, well,
Because it's been up to the village board, because I think you sent in legislation and all that, and they reviewed it already.
yeah, honestly, I've got to refresh my memory on where we're at with all of it.
Cause I know it went to the board. And I can't remember what the board did, but no.
I think we probably gave the legislative committee the, recommendation to look at it and
That's where it's at.
and bring something back and.
That was Steve that was running that? So maybe Steve never got a chance to finish it then. But I don't
I'll have to
even,
go back and look at those. minutes.
you have to look at the minutes.
Yep, yep. But we gotta wrangle it back in, that's why I want to get back on here, so we can make sure that it's all buttoned up and everything's tight, dialed in, so we can start going.
Especially with summer eventually coming and
Yeah. Yep. So we still have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second to adjourn?
Second.
All right, thank you.
Motion and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sure.
see that, Jerry, that's why we will let you make motions.
I'm just trying to move it along, It's not like there's a brewery.
No. So where did that at?
Well, but there's a line, and I mean, in the line, there's.
Like that element are full time, basically. But
How do you stop it?
I think we just,
Like what is?
end.